Welcome to the PinkUn Show, our dedicated Norwich City shenanigans that knows exactly what it's like to go from one extreme to another. I'm Michael Bailey, and over the next 30 minutes or so, we will bring you all the key Canaries discussions from Hull and last night's draw at Barnsley. Check out the bags under my eyes, by the way. Look ahead to Reading's visit on Saturday and wonder how you're feeling about what's happening at your football club. Joining us to do that and more, we have a top media double act of Press Association journalist and City supporter Jim Van Wijk and top TV commentator Dan O'Hagan. And we should say we're not at the Woolpack. Clearly, as you can tell, we are outside the sinkhole, the now famous sinkhole. About 100,000 people have been watching this sinkhole since it arrived this morning. So presented with the option of presenting the show outside a sinkhole, to talk about Norwich City season. Who would turn down that opportunity when it lands in your lap? The bad news is these two gents are expecting to be in the pub and huddled up really warm. So Jim, I've given you my fleece and we've got hot tea.
I really appreciate that. Thank you very much. I say, you know, it's just like being in one of those nice press boxes, isn't it? And you know, on a nice cold night.
This is how I felt at Oakwell last night. Now you're going to suffer the same way. Dan, how are you?
Good. And Michael, you make a great cup of tea, by the way. Very good indeed.
Not many people have said that to me in the last year, so I'll definitely take it. We are live on PinkUn.com and the PinkUn Facebook page. We want to hear from you too, of course, be it on Jamal's rise, Watkins Plateau, or how happy or worried you are about where all this is heading for Norwich City. Get in touch and make our coldness worth yours and our while. Get your comments, questions and banter through to us here down the pub, I've written, sorry gents, by the sinkhole, especially for our two guests. Anything you want to ask them about commentary, being a budding journalist, whichever, whatever, the art of interviewing, all you need to do is post your words through on the Facebook page and they will ping right through to my iPhone, which is sat here, all very good and dandy. There you are, Sean, who's doing a stellar job. Now, fresh from a stellar introduction at Oakwell and a vintage effort, Wesley Moolahan is with us tonight to help us go through the latest Norwich City headlines. Go down. Give us a D! Yes, it's another draw for Norwich, this time at Barnsley. They did at least come from behind and didn't lose to a side without a home win since November. You're an expert at this, Dad. Pee off! We'd have actually taken a draw at Hull, given City threw away a 3-1 lead, thanks to the shambolic refereeing of Tim Robinson. Thanks for that, we won't forget it, Tim. What a save! Canaries launched bond scheme to help fund academy redevelopment to the tune of up to £5 million, and apparently the fundraising is already going well. Colney needs it. Jam on toast! He may have had a difficult time at the KCOM, but Lewis's superb breakthrough effort has been rewarded with a Northern Ireland call-up. Russell Martin, Kenny McLean and Grant Hanley are also set for Scotland duty, with more calls to come ahead of the first international break of 2018. And finally, get well soon, Tets. Husband puts a hole in Alex Tetty's foot. Ouch. Here's hoping he's not out for too long. Likewise, Mo Leitner's hamstring, Tom Trebble's ankle and knee, and a host of ill players. Which is where Norwich City have been in recent weeks. Let's get stuck into it then, gentlemen, shall we? It has been a funny couple of games, hasn't it? And Hull was remarkable. Have we figured out what that second Hull penalty was for yet?
No idea. It's one of those crazy. You look at the replay time and time again, you can't see what the referee can see in his wildest dreams. How that was a penalty make no sense at all to me at all.
I think in the replay he indicated it was a shirt pull, didn't he? You know, which is, yes, you know, that is a foul, that is a penalty. But if you started giving every single foul for that, you know, you'd have more than 4 penalties in the game. You'd probably have 20, but then it might stop it. So yeah, very difficult one. But from that sort of position, Norwich really should have closed out, shouldn't they?
Yeah, I know I do keep going on about the referee, and I do think that decision clearly had a massive impact on the game. It's fine if the referee then does it for other decisions, but they're never going to do that, and one referee can't change the game on his own. So there we go. Hull are actually probably a decent side. They shouldn't really be where they are in the division, should they really?
They are, yeah. They've got the right players. They've not had the right team, if you like, the last maybe 6 months, but a couple of good wins. Again, of course, at Ipswich last night as well, so they're on the way up again, I think. But yeah, I mean, Hull aren't really where they should be in the league, I think, overall.
And a kind of a weird game at Barnsley, because a lot of Norwich fans still have expectation of what they want their side to do, and they were booed up at half-time and having just gone a goal behind. People weren't happy and aren't happy at the fact that it was just a draw. At the same time, people accusing them of being on the beach. They didn't. They dug in the second half. They produced a reaction, and arguably they probably should have won it had Josh Murphy taken his late chance.
Yeah, I think also we have to remember that the manager doesn't have all the players he wants at his disposal. The argument could be there that has he actually worked out what his best formation is? Did he kind of stumble across sort of something that worked in the second half last night? But at the moment, he's just got to sort of put whatever players he can into a system that gives Norwich something to hold on to, really.
It's going to be a strange end to the season, really, isn't it?
Yeah, I think Jim's right. I think the squad right now is threadbare. I think it's been stretched as far as they can really stretch it. It does suggest the summer needs to have a massive influx of players, quality players. But right now, 14th, I think Norwich are where they really should be. The squad they have, bar one or two really good players in Maddison and obviously Angus Gunn on loan, they're probably where they should be.
They've got some messages coming through already. I see Sean's trying to get another shot at the sinkhole. That's good. Keep those up, Sean. Neil Austin, oh my days, Archant budget cuts. I mean... we should be at the pub, and that never costs us anything anyway. So I thought this would be something of a slight change in plan.
Cultural, isn't it? It's cultural. It's showing people of the world, what Norwich has to offer, which is, sinkholes that need to be filled in.
Exactly it. I don't know how you can cut a budget either if there isn't any money there in the first place. But there we go. Lisa Jack, is Jim any relation to the legend that was Dennis Van Wijk?
No. Same surname, which I understand is not uncommon in Holland, but no. Unfortunately, I wish I could have played a bit like him as well. But apart from obviously everyone remembers that handball in the cup final, don't they? Which people don't let me forget.
Oh, bless. Well, and they're spelt differently, of course. The names are just a slight.
They're spelt exactly the same. It's just when he came over, they sort of the I and the J ended up being sort of moulded into a Y. So I had to deal with that a lot in my life, really. But
sorry to bring it up again, Jim.
I just pronounce it right, so there we go.
We had this chat just before we went on air, didn't we, Dan? Norwich, are they finding their level now, or should they actually be achieving more? A lot of people are saying this is mediocrity, and some have been expecting it all year, yet the quality of the players they've got?
I think a lot of the players they've got are new to this league, especially the players who came in mid-season. So I think they are where they should be. On paper, Norwich's squad is not a top 6 squad. Is it a 14th place squad? Perhaps not, but I think mid-table is where Norwich probably at the moment should be, and obviously where they are.
It's different for the fans, isn't it, Jim? Because we had this conversation, myself, Paddy and Dave Freezer on the podcast over at lunchtime, which is on the Facebook page and PinkUn.com. The fans' expectations are at a level, and while the club and the players and the management are all going through a transition, probably has to be some sort of fan transition in that as well.
Yeah, I think we just have to have a little bit of a reality check. We've had so many good years recently, from winning promotions, under Paul Lambert, bringing the club up so quickly from the doldrums where they were, and then retaining the Premier League status, and then the disappointment of going down, and then all the euphoria again about Wembley, but. It's a difficult one because Norwich City is set up to support a Premier League team. The city can support a Premier League team with those attendances. Certainly when you look home and away, the county can. But unfortunately, the only place it really matters is what you do on the pitch. And whether you like it or not, clubs, Wolves, Cardiff, Bristol City, all of these teams, seem to have got it, together on the pitch at the moment, and that's really where it counts.
Jim, make sure you have some tea before it gets cold. Yes. I'm worried about your tea. And Dan, I remember speaking to you about Mario Vrancic when he came in. You've seen a lot of German football, not necessarily all the players that Norwich have brought in, it must be said. How have they adapted? Have you expected more of them?
I think Vrancic has been a slow burner. I think at a slow start, he's got better as the season's gone on. I think Leitner's injury is a massive blow. I think he's a quality player. Scribani, I'm not sure about. I think to go from the third division to this league is difficult. Zimmerman's been a wonderful find. But I think it's been a mixed bag. I think Vrancic, we'll see the best from him next year maybe. But I think one or two have had slow starts. Others have come in and done well from the off.
I suppose that's the point, isn't it? That Norwich are working in a market where some are going to come off and probably a fair few won't, and hopefully they can transition those pretty quickly. What have we got here? Let's get some messages. Well, let's say you can take in the verdict of myself, my colleagues Paddy Davitt and David Freezer on PinkUn.com. As I said, we did a podcast and a Facebook Live over lunchtime on our way back from Barnsley. You can also find the post-match reactions from Daniel Farker, James Maddison and James Husband over the last week or so, and my interviews with City Managing Director Steve Stone and Sporting Director Stuart Webber, discussing the Canaries bond scheme and what that means for the wider club. What have you two made of that? I mean, we can probably dust off some myths and things like that, but in terms of the scheme in general, gents?
I think an academy and the right setup is important, but I think a first team is what Norwich need now. get in the Premier League and then invest in the academy.
Because problem is they never did it when they were there, Dan.
Well, I think we're seeing now what a big open goal miss the last Premier League season was, because Norwich didn't make the most of that opportunity. And I think to ask the fans to kind of dig deep and support this project, I think the fans want a winning first team, first and foremost. Forget the academy for now, get the team winning, get back in the Premier League, and then look at the future and look at the academy.
I mean, they have done this really to separate the academy and the first team. And let's be honest, I was expecting them to say, here's a bucket, we need some money, help us build the academy. I mean, actually, if any supporters have that money lying around, then maybe not so many of them do, they will get some money back, regardless of what happens.
Yeah, I mean, it's not an old idea. I mean, going back a few years, when the club issued some more shares, didn't they? I mean, a few of us probably purchased them. I did myself. I guess it's just now the stark reality of life outside the Premier League and outside the parachute payments is coming home to roost, and the club have really got to try and do everything they can to try and maximise the revenue from whatever it is. We don't have an owner who's going to come in and suddenly find millions of pounds to transform the club. And do we really want to do it that way, or do we want to try and do it by getting the performances right on the pitch first, and then as Dan says, once you get back into the Premier League, then if the money is then invested properly in the club, it should safeguard the future really for the next generation, shouldn't it?
It's a key point. Norwich fans will look at Ipswich and go, well, they do it, but they have an owner, even though he's been criticised, still puts in £7 million a year, and that's £7 million more than Norwich have got. Let's go through some of your messages. Let's just say we are in the Arching car park because there's a sinkhole behind us, and that is too good an opportunity to miss, and all these guys are delighted we decided to do it outside. Paul Gloughlin, Jimmy, can you give me your opinion on Norwich making the playoffs, and how will you feel when Preston make the Premier League?
Yeah, really, that's going to be really enjoyable. Seeing Alex take Preston up. Look, I think he's a decent coach, and I think he's showing what an impact he can have. Whether he can sustain that in the long term, I think the jury's still out. I mean, you could just see what happened here. I mean, for Norwich now to make the playoffs, it's not unheard of, but they'd have to finish like a train and win absolutely every single game, and all the teams above them would have to have a collapse. But while those points are still available, that's what the playoffs do. It does keep alive the season for teams who are sort of down. If you look at the table, teams like Millwall and things, they'll even be thinking the same, and even dare we say Ipswich, they'll be looking at it and saying, well, if we can put enough wins together, but as you said, too many D's in the Norwich column for my life.
We'll have a look at the table in a bit later in the show, but that ain't going to happen. Harvey Monk says, why has no one made any fuss about the penalty from Hull? Honestly, Harvey, watch my video verdict from Saturday and you will see me rant about that decision, but clearly it has to be put into context too, and had Norwich not given away other things, and it wouldn't have maybe been so influential. Dean Bowman, let's start things off. He says, Farke is clueless. Anyone thinks otherwise, they have problems. Maddison will be off in the summer and no money will be spent. We will be battling relegation in my eyes. Now, some fans will go, come on, man, Dean, cheer up, it's fine. But actually some fans are generally worried, and it's not as straightforward, of course, as taking James Maddison out the side and all of a sudden you've got no goals and no points, but he is going to be a miss, and you kind of add it into the fact that Angus Gunn is only on loan, and even Harrison Reed probably won't be here next year.
Yes, and that's a big concern. I think Maddison, obviously, he's got a third of Norwich's goals this season from midfield. So you lose him, obviously for a decent fee, we hope, but that's a big hole to fill. And as for Farke being clueless, look, it's his first season. I think he has found the going tough. I think it's probably a tougher league than he thought it would be. But I think the signs are there. We can see Norwich playing some nice football, but it's just in that final third the spark's not there. Now, if he gets the right players in the summer, then who knows? But I think for Farke, judge him on his second season, not this first one.
It's interesting because, I mean, the messages that are coming through, Kim Medler, we need to shop for a new manager, Jason Self, a new manager for next term. Quite clearly, certainly in terms of a couple of fans that are coming through on here, they're not entirely happy, but there is a long-term feel about this whole thing. I don't know where Norwich go if they do decide, and I don't think they will, that Daniel Farke is not good enough, to stay certainly this side of next season.
I mean, Dan with his connections in Germany will, probably know better than me. But from what I understand, when when it became clear he was going to leave Borussia Dortmund, they weren't happy about it, and they were more concerned about his departure than apparently they were about Wagner before he went to join Huddersfield. So, you know, this guy obviously has, you know, something about him, but as Dan said, it's a division which is unrelenting, and it's unlike any other. In the same way the Premier League is, and until you experience it, you're not really going to be able to, you know, to set your side up how you want. It's interesting that he's gone back to players he's known to try and bring him. We have the song in all, you know, so many Germans and everything, and you know, is it a bit of that? So maybe next season we might see a bit more how he wants to play.
I think as well, he's not used to what we have over here, the relentless midweek weekend. Germany, they don't have that. So him and the players who've come in, this is new. So maybe next season they'll be better adapted to that as well. So I think, look, this season was always going to be, awful phrase, work in progress. Next season is where we have to judge Farke on what he does and how Norwich finish in the league next time, because this year's obviously, I think, gone as a playoff push. But
the other thing I think we need to remember is the club have gone with this new model now, and they've gone with a complete overhaul, you know, behind the scenes. We all know what happened there with, you know, with the academy and, you know, coaches and, you know, Huck's leaving and everything like that. So this is the setup now that this current structure of the club want, and they're going to have, with, you know, the head coach just looking after the playing side of it. So if you change the head coach, you've then got to change everybody around him, and you're talking about compensation packages, not just for the top man, but for all of his other people as well.
And Norwich have been criticised for that. I mean, a lot of money has gone towards paying people off for bad decisions, and I guess it's so hard to work out where the bad decision is. It's by the very nature, Norwich are entering something that is going to take 2 to 3 years, and is a departure from what they've had in the last 6 or 7 years.
Yeah, they've backed Farke. It's all there for him now to work the way he wants to work in terms of the coaching staff, training sessions, whatever. It's all there. It's up to him now to kind of make that work for him. If it doesn't work, then obviously he has to go. But I think give him next season to see where Norwich are, because this season's been that kind of steep learning curve, I think, for all concerned.
St. John Cooper says the transition word is a joke, so I don't think he likes the transition word. He also adds our recruitment has got even worse despite the changes at the club, which is kind of a big thing for them to prove when it comes to the next summer. But, you know, some's worked, some hasn't, and that's going to be the kind of gamble that they take on. Keep the comments and questions coming in. Brilliant stuff, great stuff, gents. Thank you very much. But I think it is time for us to have a little bit of light relief. Sadly, it's not warm relief, gents. Let's bring some of this. Dan. Yes, it's Flip the Bird. Last time out we saw Cedric Anselan beat David Powell 8-6 despite never playing any sort of bar mat game, he said. That's what Cedric said, although the spies have since told me that he may have been practising longer than he let on. So there we go, movie teaser. Either way, Steve Cook remains top of the pile as we head into the final stretch of the season. Now it's the turn of Jim and Dan. Dan, you have the chance to improve on your score of 5 in a minute last time, but the difference is now you only get half a minute. 30 seconds. We changed the rules halfway through the season. Obviously, we're allowed to do that. So, sorry about that. And of course, this is the first time we've played the game outside as well. So,
it is wind chill. There is a breeze.
Yeah. Your fingers are going to be cold. Really, this is a pretty difficult high tariff.
It's a great leveller, isn't it?
This is like Norwich trying to score a goal. There is a high tariff of the way they're trying to do it. The winner gets a much prized selfie with Wesley Moolahan, who's taking a bit of a shine to your tea there, Dan. And of course, you will forever be deemed more Robert Flick than Flicky Van Volswinkel, whoever wins. Or maybe Dennis Van Flick. Dennis Van Flick! Come on. Right, there we go. Are we ready? Dan, are you ready?
No, I ain't got anything to time it.
Dan has realised he hasn't got anything to time it with. I've got a watch, so we can do that. So when you're ready, Dan.
Just 3, 2, 1, go!
Go! Away we go. You both know what you're doing, so that's good. Jim's got an interesting technique. And Dan, there is one. You add another one. These guys' hands. It's actually impossible with the wind. But keep going because we've got nothing else to fill the time with. So there we go. It's actually quite comical watching you do it in the wind, to be honest. So we'll assess things at the end. Jim's just adding them. One in the teacup. That'd have been double points.
It's worth 2 in the hand.
Jim's hands aren't working. I'm pretty sure they're about to drop. They're about to drop.
Long time either, mate. There you go.
I did, but I'll count that one. Yeah, why not? Jim, take that one. Dan's added a few, and
2.5.
his arms are shaking.
No,
are we time up? Oh, was I timing it? Time! Yeah, pretty much time. How'd you get?
2.5.
Get on? 2.5 from Dan.
I'll take 4.
We'll take a 4. We'll kick 4. Yeah, well done. Dan, you keep your score from last time.
Yeah.
Oh no, actually, I think you got 2.5 because we halved it. So you've got to do. How many did you get?
2.5, well,
3.
let's call it
Double.
3.
Yeah, so 6 in a minute.
6 in a minute.
Yeah.
Well done, gents. You enjoy that?
No.
It's the best fun I've had with my gloves off for a long time.
Let's face it. When we do that in May, it'll be gloriously warm, and everyone will really enjoy it. But
I'll be here in my 1958-59 Cup Run shirt for you.
I love it. Good stuff, Jim. Good stuff. Right. Well, I thought that was the end of Flip the Bird. If you want to play, come and join us in the pub one time. If we're in the pub, if we're in the pub. Now, I felt in the past maybe we've had the lovely guests in and not had a bit of time to chat to them. So therefore, we're going to have a chat to you guys and rectify it here. So let's get to know you a bit. Jim, how are things going? You work at Press Association. You spend a lot of time covering Arsenal as well as dipping into Norwich.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, at the moment there's obviously quite a lot of sort of Premier League news going about. The big story today has been Harry Kane with his injury. We've been keeping in touch with Tottenham over that. It looks like he's got ligament damage in his ankle. The club say he should be back April. Training again next month. How that then impacts for when he'll be up and running again, no one's really quite sure. Obviously, we've got the England squad announcement coming up as well. It'll be interesting to see what happens in those friendlies, and of course whether England will actually go to the World Cup in Russia. That's still a bit of I can't see any way where the England squad wouldn't travel. Obviously, safety needs to be a priority, but it looks like that's where sort of sport and politics might come to a head this summer.
Yeah, it's quite a mix, quite considerably. What have you made of the Arsenal soap opera as well? Is this going to be Arsenal's last season?
I don't know. I think he'll outlast us all, won't he? It's a difficult one. Arsene Wenger always used to say, every defeat for Arsenal is a crisis. And every victory is a fresh dawn, isn't it? So, but this season I think is the most time that it's been the abuse is starting to get personal as well. I think from the manager, and obviously not just on social media everywhere, and Arsenal fan TV now. Everybody seems to be a sort of celebrity and have their own opinions, but I think they've got a good chance in the Europa League. Then maybe make some sort of progress and impact there. And would that be a fitting time for him to sort of say thank you very much? And but I just think people should try and remember him for what he did for English football, and transformed. A lot of the techniques he brought in were unheard of, and now everybody else is. He's almost sort of like the Pep Guardiola of his day. How he changed things around. But it's an interesting season at Arsenal at the moment. Yeah,
and they were of course the Invincibles. They actually managed it, whereas Man City won't. In terms of, you have moved back to Norwich though recently. Is it nice being back?
Yeah, yes it is. Yeah, and the family enjoy it, and obviously, of course, I get to to pop down to Carrow Road every
boy.
Again, when I can, not in the going in the stands and sort of trying to see it from a family point of view again, and sort of getting my son involved in it. But it's a difficult time for Norwich fans at the moment, isn't it? To sort of try and keep the faith with what's going on.
We'll see how many people renew. That's always the big test, of course. Dan, you are a busy man, and you said this is your last night off for a while, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
What a way to spend it.
I know, yeah. Tomorrow's the Europa League for BT. Then the weekend I'm going to Germany, so I've got Gladbach, Hoffenheim Saturday. Then Sunday I'm in Leipzig for Leipzig against Bayern, where Bayern can win the league if Schalke don't win on Saturday. So excited. Then we've got, I think, 4 internationals in the so-called break. So very busy. Yeah, it's. I think March is where you're going to hit the wall as a commentator because you've done so much work, obviously from August onwards, and then March comes, and you're thinking, 2 months to go. Then it's all get on the beach and relax a bit. But hectic, but obviously love the job, and love some great games in Germany, and hopefully we'll see Bayern in the league on Sunday at Leipzig.
And of course, they Stoke City stole your number 2, didn't they? Because they whipped Paul Lambert away. Yes. Are you planning on commentating during the World Cup? Are you expecting to be busy then?
Not at the moment, but always open to offers. So fingers crossed.
I don't think we've got the rights.
You know what? I wouldn't mind a few weeks off because it's been such a long, season and a bit. So if it happens, it happens. If not, no. I've done the last 2 World Cups, so to Russia not want to kind of be too upset to miss, really.
Yeah, there's a prevailing thought there, I think.
Here, though, possibly. I don't know.
Yeah, sorry about that. Let's crack on with the championship picture as it stands, shall we? Dan, let's have a look at the top of the table, shall we? Wolves recovered from their surprise loss at Villa to beat Reading at home last night. Reading head to Carrow Road on Saturday, of course, while Villa surprisingly slipped up at home to QPR last night, which could be terminal for their automatic promotion bid. It looks like 2 from 5 to complete the playoff picture. Ipswich are propping up the top half, but it's a far from happy ship down Suffolk Way. Meanwhile, Norwich look the epitome of mid-table, although a top-half finish above their nearest and dearest is still achievable. Back-to-back wins for Hull over East Anglian opposition means they now sit a little closer to where they should. Barnsley remain in trouble, as do Reading, but the bottom three's plight is still pretty sticky. Every team has now has 9 games to play. A busy weekend sees some corkers, starting with a West London derby, while Ipswich travel to stalling Bristol City. Villa will need to win at Bolton, with Cardiff in action on Sunday lunchtime, with an intriguing trip to Derby. Now, Dan, I should just talk to you about Wolves, because you are a Wolves fan as well, and there's been a lot of noise around, financial fair play and how they've been going about things. I mean, it's interesting they've waited until March to talk about this, when it's been going on for a year, and also I think one of the teams to complain was Aston Villa, who, of course, I'm sure have complied with all the financial fair play rules.
Yeah, I think the thing is over Jorge Mendes and just how involved he is in recruitment and selection, and whether there's interests are conflicted, because I think Nuno's one of his clients, the manager. I think maybe 7 or 8 players are too. So I'm not a fan of how it's been done. I think Wolves have almost bought the title this year. I'm not a huge fan of that. They have played some amazing football, but that team has been bought using money that other clubs can only dream of in that league. So, yeah, I mean, the FFP thing, we'll have to see, but I'm not a fan of how it's been done. But if Wolves have broken the rules, then obviously they should be punished.
It's one thing getting up. I think that is possible to buy. Staying in the Premier League is always a different matter, even if you've got loads of money, because you're coming up with teams with a lot more of it. Ipswich, what do you make of the Ipswich situation? Jim, there's an easy question for you, because the attendances are dwindling to new lows. The atmosphere at Portman Road last night was pretty telling, and of course they got done 3-0 by Hull, and they'd actually been doing okay since they drew the derby, but still, I think the fans have had enough of Mick McCarthy down there.
Well, I think they have, but I mean, I actually quite like Mick. And I think and I think he deserves a great deal of credit for being able to consistently keep that team in the Championship and on the fringes of potential promotion push a couple of seasons ago, where they played against us, obviously, but it's a difficult situation, because I think Ipswich will only realise what a good job Mick McCarthy has done when someone else comes in. And they don't have the money, and they don't have the the budget to try and deal with things and get the club moving. But I think they're now the longest serving club in the Championship, and without going
16 years.
They got applause for that, Carrow.
without going either way. And it doesn't seem that long ago when there are guys like Finidi George and everything like that. And it was that's right. But again, it's a club with. One, I like to say it because obviously we're in yellow and green territory here, but the city can support a Premier League team, the infrastructure can that, and the fans are there. But again, they need to get things right on the pitch. But just like with Arsenal, be careful what you wish for when Mick's gone.
Exactly that. I think Mick's done a great job with no money, and to be where they are mid-table, I think that's pretty good.
Sean's gone off to get a new angle from the sinkhole. Is it still there, Sean? Yeah, sinkhole's still there. That's good to hear, because we wouldn't want it to be a waste, us sitting here outside in the cold, would we? Right, let's rattle through as many of your questions as we can. Neil Austin, Dan, given your knowledge of an everyday German standard player, how do ours compare?
I think there are some good and some not so good. I think certainly Vrancic will grow as he stays here for longer. Scribeni's the one I've got doubts about, because he's come from a fairly low level. And I think to come in and score goals in this league is difficult anyway.
I mean, they still spent £1 million on him.
Was that much for Scribeni? That's a surprise to me. I didn't know what the fee was, but I think that's a lot of money for a guy who's never played above the German 3rd Division, and most of his goals will come in the 4th Division. So I think that's a big gamble for a club who've got no money. So I didn't know that.
That's a telling reaction there from Dan. Lisa Jack, hang on a sec, she says. Angus Gunn and James Maddison were not heard of before this season. Plenty more gems to find, and don't forget the big money names who have flopped. And Lee Coates, what about the strikers in the under-23s? A lot of clamour for them, and I think in their recent under-23s performances they haven't really looked like being able to make the jump, but clearly that level is going to be quite important to Norwich this season. And Lisa's right, Norwich have promoted. Angus Gunn was a risk and has proved himself, so I guess everyone will hope they can find the same again next year.
Yeah, I mean, Norwich have a tradition, don't we, down the years of finding young players, from Lee Power and Chris Sutton and through to Darren Eadie, great friend of the show, obviously. But I guess now the problem is you pay for giving youngsters a chance. You pay for that in points, because if you bring someone in, they've got to hit the ground running. They've got to, they won't be given the opportunity to bed themselves into the team. We all remember what Harry Kane did when he came here to Norwich.
Not much.
And exactly, and people were going, "Oh, well, he's no good, is he?" And look where he is now. So I think it takes a big manager to stand up and say, "Well, if I haven't got the money to bring someone in, I'm going to bring someone through." But have Norwich got the quality of that in there? There's a couple of decent guys in there, but if you're looking for someone to make such a bigger impact as Maddison did, I'm not so sure. And of course, Gunny unlikely to be here next season. I think he could even be in the England senior squad.
Do you think he'll get a call up? Yeah. Do you think he?
Yeah, I would. I would think so. I mean, there's still sort of the jury's out on Mr. Hart, aren't they? With what role he can play, which I think is a shame, because he's a nice guy, and when he was at Manchester City on the top of his form, he was a very, very good goalkeeper. But Gunny has something about him, doesn't he? Something slightly different to his dad, and some of the saves he's been doing this year. And I always say, when the argument people, oh well, he's playing in the Championship team, but if you're pulling off save after save after save each week, what does it matter what level you're doing?
All the same size.
Yeah, a world class save is a world class save. Whether that's in League One or in the Premier League.
It's just so rare we've seen him make a mistake, even from him commanding his penalty area. So he's done really well there. Graham Lee.
In practice,
also very true. Hey, they've kept a lot of clean sheets, Jim. Graham Leader says hat and gloves. It's not that cold. Jim, what do you want to say to that?
Well, I shaved my head, especially this morning, because I knew I was coming on. But being a little bit follically challenged, it is rather cold. But there you go. For the last few minutes, look, I'll take my hat off there.
What makes you think is we've only got a few minutes left? Ricky John Reed, why the hell are you not in the warm pub? Yeah, that's my fault, that one. Kevin Stewart, who do you think will be Player of the Year? Come on, that's a straightforward one.
Easily. I think Gunn or obviously Mr. Maddison as well, but for me Gunn I think has been across the season so consistent.
Yeah, I think it's difficult, isn't it, sometimes for supporters to give the nod to a goalkeeper, but I wouldn't have any dispute with that. But I think it will still be Maddison. I mean, scoring a hat trick, from in his position just shows how important he has become. And I have to say, I hold my hands up, when he was first in the team, people were raving about him. I'm like, I don't think he's going to do it. And he is someone who has proven he can take his chance. But I'd be very surprised if he wasn't in the Premier League next season.
It'll be fascinating who comes in for him, how much they offer, and how he does. It has genuinely surprised me how well James Maddison has stepped up, and clearly a lot of people have thought so much of him.
Yeah, I mean, a big player. What is he, 20 years old? 21 now. But his first season here in the first team, terrific. Really, really good, and I hope Norwich, when he goes, get the right fee from him as well, because we've seen players go in recent years maybe for not quite their market worth.
It'll be a massive opportunity.
And we're sort of quite interested in him during the January window, but obviously that's a difficult sort of market to move in. But in the summer, I would think a bit of it in excess of 10-12 million quid. I can't see Norwich putting that down even at that stage.
Really?
No,
10 to 12 million pounds.
I would think so, even like that. I mean, because you've got to remember, even if Norwich managed to offload some people, how much of an impact losing all of that, all of the extra finances is going to be. So it's going to be it could be a bit of a fire sale at Norwich, really, for anyone half decent. I mean, yes, you'd like to say, okay, we'll hold out for he's worth 25-30 million. You're not going to get that, especially when people know the situation that Norwich are in financially.
They sell James Maddison for £12 million. There will be a riot, I would imagine. But there we go. We will see. I've put
get the pitchforks out because You know, yeah. I mean, you could see this. You could see the same with Alex Pritchard, wasn't it? You know, I mean, the club had a valuation that they met, and you could argue that was well below his market, you know, his true market value. But you know, he's not really set Huddersfield alight, has he?
No, not yet. No, not really. We will see. Let's finish and get in the warm by talking about Reading, shall we briefly? I mean, they've had a really poor season. You think about they were in the playoff final. They were a penalty kick away from playing in the Premier League this year. This year, been absolutely nowhere near it. Yet Jaap Stam is still there. I mean, they've stuck with him. Yeah,
they've kept faith. Obviously, had an amazing first season this year. They've been way short. But Wolves in midweek they were hammered 3-0. It could have been 6 or 7. So it's a game which Norwich can win. But we know their home form has been pretty wretched this season. But certainly it's a game which I think Norwich really should be aiming to win, and I hope they can.
A little stat, which is actually from Chris Gorham's column a few weeks ago, but still stands. Of course, Norwich beat Reading 7-1 last season. 6 of the goals coming in the first half in front of the Barnsley. That is one more than Norwich have managed in front of the Barnsley all season this season. It's a wonderful stat. Well done, Mr. Chris Gorham, of course. Reading, meanwhile, have actually won 1 in 17 league games, which is the 3-1 win at Burton. That's not really ideal, is it? A little question, we'll get one more in here. Paul Hennock, do you think that Onel Hernandez has the strength on the ball that Josh Murphy clearly lacks? Murphy knocked off the ball so easily again and again, could learn from Onel, I think. I mean, I thought we saw the switch go on with Josh Murphy last night in the second half. Scored a cracking goal, had a shot that just fizzed wide, best cross I've seen him put in for months, and just those little things. It's a big kind of period, isn't it, for Josh Murphy? And if we have a look at your guys' 11s for the Hull game, who should we have first, Dan? Jim, let's have a look at your 11, Jim. We'll dig it out. My hands are stopping to work. You've got Josh in there, of course.
Yeah. I mean, I was going to drop him, but then you know that might be a bit harsh after the goal, and you know maybe even do something radical and stick Jamal Lewis up there. I mean, he's got an attacking mindset as well, haven't he? But I just think this might be something that the manager has kind of almost sort of stumbled across, which is pretty much the sort of same formation that we had.
So you've gone for back
Reed
four?
Maybe coming. Yeah, I think so. I mean, look, I'm a bit of a 4-4-2 man, but I think that works well. I mean, these guys have performed really well since they've come in, and I think he's got himself a new car now, hasn't he? So no more of these leg-related incidents. And look, if Hernandez and Murphy can stretch the defence, what all defenders hate playing against is pace, and these guys have got that. These guys have got that in abundance. And if they can stretch Reading, then hopefully we'll see a few goals. I mean, I'm taking my lad on Saturday, so he's got an undefeated record so far at Carrow Road. So he hasn't seen many games though. Obviously.
Okay, well then it's quality, not quantity. And it's interesting because Murphy and Hernandez do look much better when they're in that sort of front three almost, and they can play a little wider, yet Norwich look tighter at the back when they play a back three. So it's that balance, isn't it, Dan? Yeah,
I've gone for the 3. I think, as you say, defence looks a lot more at home when they do play with the 3 centre halves. We hope that Zimmerman's fit enough to play 2 games in the space of 4 or 5 days. Midfield, Vrancic and Reed. Reed hopefully will be over his virus by then. And up front I've gone for Scribani with Murphy, because I mean they're so short of numbers. It's a case of who's fit plays, but just shows, doesn't it, how thin the squad is now, and how they do need bodies for next season.
Well, I mean, Marley Watkins as well. I mean, when he came here, people were thinking, he's going to score a hatful of goals, and just been so disappointing. But again, maybe one for next season. Possibly, it'll all be right.
But I can't believe they turned down apparently a 7-figure bid in January from which seems incredible.
It does sound incredible, and is fairly incredible. But then they probably needed the homegrown players, to be honest, to keep them in. And you'd say Marley Watkins, a player who scored 10 goals in the Championship last year, proven Championship player to a degree, and just has not done it. And that's the joy.
Really, proven Championship player, could have done with, a few more goals. But it's like Dan said, it's a threadbare squad at the moment. I mean, you got Nelson, love him or hate him, who would probably lead the line most of the time, and obviously Alex is going to be out for a little while as well, and he was a big miss as well earlier in the season, wasn't he? So it's a difficult one, but you might get a game, Mike. I think
that has been joked about. Take my boots again, just in case. Gentlemen, let's just get your prediction then, shall we, for Saturday's game against Reading going into the international break?
Dare I say 0-0 again? No, I think Norwich by a single goal, 1-0 Norwich.
I think if it was 0-0 again at home, that would be a club record of 3 successive goalless draws at Carrow Road in the league.
Let's say Norwich City 3, Reading 0.
3 goals.
Okay.
3-0.
Let's go for that and have a real positive going into the international break, and then steamroller, and who knows, maybe maybe there is a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel, going into next season.
There you go. You see, screw you, sinkhole. We came here with poor analogies of sinkholes and Norwich City season. We've left swimming in positivity. Thank you very much, Jim. That is it for us for tonight. We can't feel our legs. Remember, you can catch our show and all our superb Norwich City coverage over at the PinkUn Facebook page, PinkUn YouTube channel, but of course primarily PinkUn.com. A big thanks to Dan and Sean, who I didn't make a cup of tea for, and they are coping very well. Dan hasn't even got a coat on. Thanks to Jim and Dan for joining us. I'm so sorry we're out in the cold, but you are stellar guest and brilliant chat too. Thanks to everyone here at the Woolpack, it says. Thanks to everyone at the full Woolpack who probably still have the table reserved. And of course to you guys for watching and getting involved. I will be at Carrow Road on Saturday for Reading's visit alongside Paddy and Dave, of course. So keep tabs on that at pinkun.com in terms of build-up, team news, live coverage and reaction and analysis after the game. And if you see us about, please do come and say hello. The PinkUn Show will return next Wednesday. Sorry, gents, at the pub, which of course will be the Woolpack around the corner. We will be there live from the usual time of 7 p.m, all being well, with our rescheduled show. So that is BBC Radio Norfolk's dynamic duo of Chris Gorham and Rob Butler. So you do not want to miss that one. And as always, see, the sheets want to go home now. If you're nearby, then please pop into the Woolpack, grab a pint and join us for the show. Until then, here's to the beach being ripped away like Winterton and Norwich City cutting loose just like they did against Reading last season. We can but dream, hey? Good night.